Gurgaon, not as well as other parts of India. So the transformation what we have seen in last couple of months is something which was, I think, not expected in coming one decade. So in such for a short span of time, many schools have proactively got into the online learning mode. With that, Premier Schools exhibition, which is one of the most iconic schools exhibition, doing physical exhibitions not only in Gurgaon but rest parts of India. I think pandemic have not stopped these schools, and so do Affairs. We have not stopped our exhibition. This virtual platform which we have created have given yesterday access to 1400 plus parents attending the exhibition on day one. And my heartiest thanks to each and every schools who have joined this initiative, and especially to you panelists for coming forward and taking these sessions, enlightening the parents. So I'll not take much time, and I would like to welcome first the moderator of this session, Mr. Bhavin Shah. So Bhavin is the CEO of Education World and Parents World, India's #1 education and parenting magazine. Bhavin is also a director of Busy Bee India, a management graduate from Mumbai University, and Bhavin has worked with the Business Advisory Group, which is a UN procurement agency, and was instrumental in launching international brands such as Gillette Mac, Duracell, Oral-B, amongst other in the Indian market. Bhavin happened to be a dear friend and a wonderful, passionate educationist. Bhavin, it's always pleasure connecting with you. And I think when education, world, and affairs comes together, there's always magic is always there. So thank you so much for coming and joining as a moderator. So now Bhavin will take this session forward, and I am very much there, seeing, getting myself enlightened by the esteemed panelists. Thank you so much. Over to you, Bhavin.
Thank you, Vivek, and I love your auspicious sticker, which is really making this Sunday really brighter and bigger when we go through this session. Thank you, Vivek, very much. Namaste to everyone, and namaste to Gurugram and rest of all who are there listening to us in NCR, India, and across wherever they are there in their globe. So wishing everyone, in fact, happy Sunday. It's very important to emphasize that today is Sunday because post-pandemic, we don't know which days, all are equal days for us, and nothing is a Saturday or a Sunday. I'm delighted to be here, Vivek, on this virtual platform that Affairs have created, and a very important panel that you have conducted over here. So without wasting any more time, I want to introduce very eminent panelists which are there with us today. Let me start with the legendary Lata Vaidyanathan. Mrs. Lata Vaidyanathan is a veteran educationist who is committed to promotion of child-centered education and well-respected both in India and abroad. She spearheaded burden-free education and a practitioner of multiple intelligence approach to learning and total quality management in education. Her contribution towards inclusive education of differently abled children is commendable. Currently, she's a director at Gyan Bharati School, New Delhi, which is currently celebrating its 40th year. Welcome, Lata ma'am.
Thank you.
Our eminent next speaker is Mr. Vishnu Karthik. Mr. Karthik, an alumnus of Harvard University and the CEO of Experiential Learning System and director of the Heritage Group of Schools. He has got over 15 years of experience in leadership development, school development, and school administration. He is propagandist of experiential learning and has visited over 50 experiential and deeper learning schools worldwide. Mr. Karthik is also responsible for the new initiative and strategic projects for the group, including curriculum development, instructional leadership, continuous school improvement, technology integration, and leadership development. I welcome Vishnu heartily. Welcome, Vishnu.
Thank you, Bhavan. It's an honor to be with all of you folks.
Our eminent next speaker is Vasudatta Sarkar. Ms. Vasudatta Sarkar is a firm believer in experiential and example-based learning and takes pride in seeing things through the child's perspective and also their underlying concerns. Ms. Sarkar understands that in the 21st century, with the challenging time and the acceptance of the new normalities, it is better to welcome a healthy and open communication with students, especially the teenagers. She has taught in the Sriram school for over 18 years and also has been a CAS coordinator and educator in the IBDP program. Welcome, Mr. Kar.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And last but not the least, a very important eminent speaker is Ms. Pooja Kedia. She is the founder of Schoolwiser, one of the most popular K-12 focused online media platform trusted by thousands of parents each year looking for the right school for their child. Pooja is an economist by qualification, a Six Sigma black belt, change agent by training, and award-winning contributions in some of the world's largest media, telecom, and retail companies such as Airtel, Tesco, British Sky Broadcasting, and she's considered the biggest. She has the biggest qualification to be a parent who experienced the ordeal of school admission due to lack of comparable information. She's a big advocate of parents choosing the right school instead of the best school. Her thought and stories have regularly featured in leading publications such as The Pioneer, Times of India, and many more. Pooja's mission is to ease access of factual, qualitative information on schools available to every parent for them to make an informed choice on the school without losing their mind. Welcome, Pooja.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here today.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have an important topic to discuss, and obviously, we all know that pandemic has caught us by surprise. And from the time the pandemic has started, every time we wish to saying the next month will be the peak. Probably this is going to go like fade a couple of months, but I'm still doubtful whether is the starting, are we at the peak or are we at the end? So with that, a very important topic, and mainly the parents' concern and parents which we are looking, the topic today, what we want to discuss is, should blended learning be an important parameter to choose a school? And with largely Affairs, which has created this occasion where thousands of parents are looking how could they choose the best school or the right school, as Pooja says. We are going to discuss the important topic on the blended learning. And before that, I would just like to set the context when education world, now we are on the 21st year, when we started the India School, we are the pioneers in the India School ranking methodology. We had taken parents' view to have a perception-based ranking, and we were the pioneers into dividing into 14 parameters. And we thought these 14 parameters are exhaustive enough to cater to each and every parent's need, the 21st century parent who are looking at various parameters rather than the so-called the only right school or the only best school. But now with more technology infusion happening, and pandemic is teaching us, saying, hey, look, you need to have blend of many things. I probably, at Education World, we are developing a parameter under the curriculum and pedagogy where the digital readiness is there, or this blended learning is going to come in. So with that, I want to, the way we would like to start this session is, I have a question to each panelist, and following with that, we'll have some perspective sharings, and then we'll take some questions from the participant. So in the order that I have introduced, I would like to start a question very particularly to each speaker. And my first question is to Lata ma'am. Lata ma'am, are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes, I am. Are you able to hear me clearly as well?
Yes, very good. And probably this is the first check of a technology or a blended learning that we have to be prepared.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the change from the face-to-face way. So, ma'am, very importantly, with all your experience, and you have seen the core of the face-to-face learning, and you have seen the you are witnessing the pandemic situation. Is blended learning the new normal, and can it be an integral part for the learning outcome, the way we have seen the online and people preparing for the offline? Would this be the blended learning be the new normal?
Thank you for having me over in the first place. I hope I can be heard well. I just need somebody's thumbs up. Okay, great. So I just need to thank you. So I just need to say that, when this whole thing started, and I don't even want to, for my own sake, call it difficult times, I want to call it different times. So in these different times, we are trying to cope with many things, and we are also looking at the very challenging situations. In normal times, we would have said, talking to teachers and talking to parents or talking to children about what blended learning is would have been an act of academic pursuit, would have been an act of telling them that there are many pedagogies through which learning quality can be improved, their better competencies and learning outcomes can be achieved. But interestingly, now we are talking about, I was surprised when the question came to me as, can blended learning be an important parameter to choose a school for parents? And this being a premier schools exhibition, this seems to come like a little bolt out of the blue, for one simple reason, that during this changeover phase, when every educator and educational systems are trying to cope with the understanding of what blended learning is, because it's not just a short phrase, it is a whole process. It is a revolutionary process. It's a process that enhances the quality of learning as we understand. But for the whole ecosystem to respond to this, it requires a lot of training. It requires a lot of deeper understanding of both education and educational practices within the institution and outside of it. And therefore, when we say, is that a parameter for choosing a school? I almost feel like giving a blanket answer in today's time, as was sometime in the past, and as it will be for sure in the future. The answer is yes. But that cannot be the only parameter for choosing. So what I want to say is that I am going to go into some very brief details. This is not a webinar where I can say what exactly is all about blended learning, but certainly I'll give a kind of a broad spectrum on which people can understand what we mean by this. When this pandemic happened and we said everything shut down, even schools shut down, but learning did not. And thanks to the teacher warriors, like frontline warriors, seem to have adapted overnight to what needs to be done, while some schools could have had the provisions and the wherewithal to do what they were doing. Every school today latched on to this and went into teaching mode and learning mode, from where they experienced their own sense of learning as also what needs to be done in the entire ecosystem and stakeholders, children, parents, everyone alike. And so the success story began. Now, apparently, today we are at crossroads. Economic, social shutdown should not happen, because besides learning for the mind and cognition, I think there is a whole socio-emotional ecosystem that needs to be addressed, failing which the rest of it will not be balanced or even right. So the schools are all waiting to reopen. So are all educators. Nothing seems to get better than saying, get the children back today. This is a pedagogy on which I'll speak for a few minutes. So just give me a minute or two more. I'm just setting the context. And also I feel that, already we are trying to do something and waiting for schools to reopen. Then suddenly these statistics hit you from whatever sources. And even if they are not very authentic, I still feel that we need to take stock of it. More than 15% children are not even traceable, they say. Less than 12.5% of children have access to technology and technology-aided tools within their homes for making any kind of learning successful, let alone blended. Then we cannot have 100% access of the children back into school, saying that all economic activity is open and so should schools. That cannot happen. The vulnerability, the sensibility, the need for doing so has all to be examined in proper line. Therefore, when we are trying to reopen schools in a phased manner, such that all these activities must go on and learning must not stop, there are many pedagogies to which we need access and training for. Somewhere we can say today that teachers have, in the past 5 months or more, have really worked hard to understand alternate modes through which children can learn. And I can tell you that parents will need to believe that schools, private schools particularly, so must public schools, which is a much larger ecosystem for children, I think we need to say that this should be a parameter. Please examine some of the major characteristics of blended learning, which is what I feel I can share in a few minutes from now.
Ma'am,
The
we'll
first
come back
thing
on
was
that. Ma'am, we'll come back on that topic. But ma'am, first on this question was mainly saying, do you feel when the online and when we are preparing for the physical world, do you feel the online is going to still continue and online will have a bigger impact on the learning outcome? What's your take on that?
all right. So it will continue because advantages of doing so has been well understood and appreciated by the entire stakeholders. And secondly, it must continue. And if it must continue and it will continue, then you should probably know what is blended learning, if that is one of the purposes of this conversation that we are having. So
Sure.
we are saying that, and why blended learning or hybrid learning or alternate forms of learning is because we are more than sure. What are the two things that decides on this? That the schools will not be attended by 100% of the children, and that not, and then since it is in rotation, learning cannot be in rotation, it has to be continuous. Therefore, there will be the simple definition that there'll be face to face as well as online, or in other words, online and offline learning, which will happen. And that is a good parameter. And those are good systems, not just because the pandemic hit us, not just because schools are closed or cannot have all the children, but because that is a better way of learning and there is a more advantageous way of learning. And let us quickly see what are those advantages so that people are better informed.
Thank
So
you,
the
ma'am.
issue
I think
is,
so. I think so. We will discuss in detail about how this could be taken forward, and that's actually
all right,
leading to my next question to Mr. Vishnu.
all right.
I think so. Vishnu, we heard ma'am talking about various terminologies. Parents who are here, who are looking at blended, hybrid, online, and now preparing for face to face. At Heritage, you are at the front runner for various innovation. Can you just explain to our viewers what are the key characteristics of a blended or a hybrid, or is there a difference between these different terminologies?
Thank you so much, Bhavin, for asking me this specific question. If you hadn't asked, I would have jumped and clarified the differences in some of these terminologies, because I think many of us use these terminologies interchangeably, but they're not the same. And also, it's extremely important, more than understanding the terminology, it's also important what is the purpose of doing a certain pedagogical tool, right? So let me just simply clarify. And it's important to remember this not because of COVID, because COVID is going to disappear if not in 3 months, 6 months, at the max a year or so, and we're going to get back the way we have been doing things. But there are certain things will change because of the experience during this COVID, especially in the field of education. So, in our view, what does blended mean? Blended essentially means that there is a physical format of learning and there is a virtual format of learning. Now, when you see a virtual, it doesn't necessarily mean use of technology,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't necessarily mean use of a screen. It essentially means that there is a certain autonomy in the way the child learns. The operative word is autonomy. Who is the leader of the learning process? Is it the teacher? Is it the student? In a physical setting, in a traditional classroom, I'm not saying all classrooms, but in a traditional classroom, the teacher is the leader of the learning process. In some sense, the teacher is guided by a certain curriculum, certain lesson plan, and the teacher leads the students towards a certain learning objective. In a pace, the teacher decides. Okay, so that's the traditional format. In a blended format, what happens is we call it flip. That's another word which you will keep hearing. What happens is that the learning process is not led by the teacher, it's designed by the teacher, it's designed by the educator, but it is led by the student in a pace which is comfortable to her. Which means that if a certain unit takes 30 minutes in a physical class to complete, the student might do it in 10 minutes or even may take 3 hours because the student is really interested in taking that lesson very slowly or maybe going more deeper, for example. So the operative word is the student leading the learning process. Come to think of it, COVID or no COVID, objective of all education reform is to make the student the leader of the learning process as against the teacher. Because when the teacher leads, the engagement of student goes down. But if you make the student leaders of the learning process, they get more engaged. They have a scientific mindset. They are a more researcher. They'll go deeper. They'll make interconnections across silos. So objective is always make the student the leader of the learning process. Now, technology facilitates that. So it's important to remember that you don't need, there are setups in this world where schools, where there is no technology, yet the student is the leader of the learning process. You'll find certain school systems where the students will lead the learning process without any screen or technology, but they'll do their own research, they'll decide the learning curriculum process. There is an end assessment, but they'll figure out a way to reach that assessment process. So technology or no technology doesn't matter. The key is whether students lead the learning process or not. Technology aids in the process. It is an aid to making the student the leader of the process. So when somebody says a blended, it essentially means that there is certain formats of learning where teacher leads and a certain formats of learning when the student leads. When these two combine together, a good school should combine these two together, then it's a blended format. A hybrid is also another terminology used for the same thing, where there is physical setup of a class, but it's also the students don't come into a classroom, but they still do the learning process wherever they are, using technology or even hardcore traditional books and projects. For example, they can go to the field, meet stakeholders, meet researchers, and put together a decision without use of any technology itself. So this is what you need to keep in mind, whether you want to blend it or not. So with this definition, then we might all agree that whether technology is there or not, whether COVID is there or not, we want our students to lead the learning process, and hence we want a blended format for our children in their learning process.
Brilliant, brilliant, Vishnu. I think so. You touched upon a very key aspect, irrespective of the terminology. It's the student leading the process of learning, and the format of where age-old theory, which was largely on the teachers leading the process, and that's where you blend it, and that's what the blended learning is coming out.
I'm so sorry. I'm just going to take a little more time. This is
Sure.
a book we referred to in our school. We referred a few years. It's called Blended. The title of the book is called Blended.
Wow.
It is the masterpiece on blended learning. I just realized it is below my laptop to make the view right. But this is by Michael B. Horn, and it's a great book, and it talks a lot about, and it's designed for parents as well. Any layman can understand in it. I strongly recommend anybody interested in this topic to go through this book, and it's available on Amazon. So.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you, Vishnu. I think so. The title was, when we were brainstorming about this topic, book was not in our mind, but this parents and for educators both, it is very good when they want to choose the blended way of approach and they want to map it with the schools which are doing it. That would be a very good parameter for a parent also to understand. I want to move on to Ms. Sarkar now. See, we have heard ma'am talking about how in continuity, the blended or the hybrid way, which is going to be the new normal. Vishnu very clearly mentioning about who's leading the process of learning. That's what it's going to be. Now, the very important stakeholder, I think so, all of us, we very much agree that teachers are the center of the entire delivery mechanism. Our culture or the culture that we had was always the face-to-face way, and largely it was the teacher-led process. Do you see, ma'am, that when this process is going to change, where the same teacher has to go on by way of a student-led process, or could be tech-led process, or when they have to blend it, are they going to cope up with that cultural shift, or can they maneuver between these two worlds?
Okay, so that's a very interesting question, and good afternoon, parents out there. Had it been in the physical form, we would have been sitting across from you, and I would have made eye contact with you and smiled at you. But this is the new normal. We've learned to smile with our eyes because masks should be on. And this new normal has thrown everybody into a tizzy, but look at our coping mechanisms. Each one of us have learned to cope beautifully. So children are coping with this new method of learning. Teachers are coping with this new teaching methodology. And for parents with children at home, well, it's a whole new wide world out there. Now, it's a challenge that's come our way, and it's to the best of our abilities that we are making the best of it and making best use of our resources out there. Because that is the whole universal truth, that the only constant in this world is change. And that is what we need to equip our students for, that you have to have the right skills that will enable you to handle whatever challenges come your way. So going forward in this rapidly changing world, there are so many other challenges that come their way. Now, what about teachers? Mr. Karthik explained this blended learning very, very beautifully. Any school that is, and I would say that is blended learning new? Absolutely not. Blended learning has been there, will be here, going forth, will continue. We just need to fine tune it as we go along. Any activity-based learning where the child is the center, and again, as Mr. Karthik says, the child has to be the leader and learner of the entire process, has to be in charge of his own learning journey. And the teacher is there as a facilitator on the side, guiding him along. Because in any activity-based learning, just as we do it with this methodology, any experiential-based methodology, PBL, for instance, that we use at Vega, where we use real-life problems as the learning process. And the children go through the learning process and they apply their knowledge to finding a solution to the problem, solution to this real-world problem. So they delve deep into concepts, they research, and that is the best way to make sure learning happens, because if you press that right curiosity button in the child, well, you've got it made, because then the child wants to know where and how and why. As a parent, I might put 50 toys out there in front of the child, but the child will only pick that one toy that interests him. And that is the interest button that we need to get going in the child. And what about the teacher? Well, the main job, if you're a teacher, the main job is for you to empower the learner over there, to make sure that you learn and relearn and unlearn, so that you are able to give the child all the right kind of skills. You have to enhance the learning process to make sure that it's a very, very straight learning line. The academics has to be positive, which means that it needs to be participatory, it needs to be appropriately challenging, it needs to be fun. That is the part of learning. Unless it is fun, unless it is meaningful, unless it is relevant to their surroundings, a child will never learn. The teacher also has to ensure that the learning environment has to be comfortable, secure, somewhere where the child feels comfortable in asking questions and in making sure that if it does not come from the teacher, I can ask my friend. There is collaboration, there is communication, all of that happens over there. But the teacher needs to ensure that her skills are also there, where she is able to ensure that she is able to answer the questions that come her way, because children will have questions. And in any experiential based learning, where you are giving the responsibility of learning to the child, there has to be voice and choice. They will ask you questions. You have to have the answers for that. And if you don't have the answers, you have to gently push the child down the right road. You have to ensure that the child wants to go in there and research and get to the bottom of everything. So you have the teacher also. The teacher needs to go through this entire learning process, constantly upgrade her own skills to ensure that she puts everything, she removes obstacles in the path of the child and she pushes them down the right path. So it's a combined thing that happens where the teacher is there on the side, she is facilitating the learning, but the entire learning is in the hands of the child. And we are living in a very, very fast-paced world, because the children have access to an unlimited amount of information out there at the click of a button. And they're definitely far more tech savvy than any of us, because they have access to gadgets, to internet, they download apps, they share apps, they are very, very tech savvy.
But Mr. Kar, sorry to cut you, but Mr. Kar, I want to have very specifically understand the overview.
I'm coming to that, yes. So what I'm trying to say is that even prior to COVID times, the teachers did, blended learning. Right now, currently, because of virtual lessons, virtual sessions, the entire focus has come onto technology. But what we need to understand is that blended learning did happen earlier, because it has to be teaching in the classroom plus technology. But we also have to know that technology cannot replace this teaching. It is a complement, it supplements the teaching that happens in the classroom. It goes in partnership. So it was happening if online learning is the new normal now, blended learning will be the new normal going forth, and the focus will be on technology, but we need to use technology very, very responsibly in the classroom. We just can't say that, okay, here is technology, here's the link, go and research. It can't be abstract. It needs to be relevant. The child needs to know in the transition from teaching to learning what happens. So teacher was doing it earlier, will continue to do it, moving forward will do it, because a teacher is trained to think out of the box so that she can empower the students. So will there be a culture shift? I don't think so, because it's been happening. If good teaching has been happening out there, well, blended learning was always there, is happening. In maybe traditional schools, they have to rethink, they need to re-strategize, because that is the way forward. So absolutely, yes, there is no culture shift that happens because it is here.
I clearly hear you saying there won't be any cultural shift, and I'll bounce one more perspective once we just finish our one round of building the whole of. And this discussion is getting more and more interesting while we have each and every pillar of these parameters under one blended learning to be discussed. There's so many perspectives coming out. I want to come to you, Pooja, for a very interesting question from a parent's perspective. See, largely from when the pandemic started, parents first started understanding, okay, school has just started something online, which is either a WhatsApp, some kind of WhatsApp engagement, could be through Microsoft Teams, that could be a one-way video through a channel which has been conducted. So has the pandemic prepared parents at all levels to accept online learning as an enabler, or they consider it just like an interim adjustment? Pooja, you need to unmute.
Technology.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I think the topic being discussed today is extremely relevant and pertinent in today's day and age. I'll come straight to answering your question. It's honestly a mixed bag. So you've got, based on our interactions, there are different sets of parents that derive different kind of value from this virtual learning environment. There are parents who think it's a blessing because it's got their child very meaningfully engaged. It gives them the opportunity to move on and do things that they wish to do. There are others that think it's a curse, either because the household structure is such, the age of the child is very small, small attention span. The child does not sit for even a 2-hour class, so the parents' involvement goes up. So there is a mixed bag, but the overall sense that I get when you talk to thousands of parents is that everyone is looking forward to school opening, packing their kids off and sending them to school. So that's the overall sense that we get. But honestly, Bhavan, when we've been talking about blended learning, for me, when I kind of look at blended learning, the word blended, and I'm glad you spent some time trying to understand that, explain that, it changes over time. So yesterday, it might have been a blend of different kind of pedagogies. Today, it is technology with the chalk and talk method. Tomorrow, it might be something else. It might be augmented learning with something else that we haven't thought about. So in my opinion, the more important question that a parent should be looking at when they're going out there and looking for a school is not whether the school does blended learning, box tick, and yes, that goes into the consideration list for us. It should be trying to understand the reason behind the blended learning. So like Vishnu kind of clearly said, it's more the reasoning behind and the logic behind the blended learning. So is it the same curriculum that is now projected on a smart board and you say that, well, here we are practicing blended learning, or is there more thought and structure to it? So if you're a parent out there, ask yourself and the school 3 simple questions that will hopefully guide you to be able to make that right choice. The first question is the what. What is the change in medium? Has there really been a change? Is it the same content, like I said, being projected, or has the curriculum backbone being structured? What's the motivation behind the change? Is the change being done because now there is better content available digitally, which the school wishes to incorporate in what they do? Is it that assessment has become better online and that's why they need to kind of include that in what they do? Or is it that it's the buzzword to have blended learning and we're taking that part? Ask yourself the why. Why is the change happening? Every time there is a change anywhere around the world, there are 2 main factors that drive that change. The first one is that there is a problem that needs to be fixed, so a change comes about. And the second one is there is an improvement that you wish to make, so that change comes about. So ask your school and try and understand yourself, what is the problem that is being fixed, and what is the improvement that the school is looking at driving. And please don't shy away from asking the school hard questions like, today this is the curriculum that is followed, tomorrow the curriculum that will change. What are you hoping to achieve in each learner's lifespan in terms of the depth of the stuff being taught, in terms of better grades, in terms of more personalization? What is it that you're trying to do? Because bringing about this change will mean a lot of hard work from the school's end. And the third is the how. And that's, I think, for me, most important. How does that change impact you and your child? Does that mean higher school fees or lower school fees? Does that mean your child will now start carrying a laptop to school instead of carrying a school bag? Does it mean that your child will have reduced hours, increased hours of school? Does the school now get split into morning and evening school? Is there going to be better content? Is there going to be personalized learning? So just focus on the what, why, and how. And hopefully, if you're able to answer those questions logically for yourself, you'll be in a much better place to be able to make the right choice, blended or no blended. My general advice would be to try and understand the ethos of the school and the people behind the school. Because at the end of the day, that once you put your child today in school, tomorrow after 5 years, when that blend changes, you will have no control over it. But what you do have control over is the people who are running the show and the ethos of the school. And if you agree with that, my sincere request is put your faith in them. Let them do their bit, because they are the experts, we're not.
Brilliant. Thanks, Pooja. I think so. This is what very important part is, to understand the vision, the ethos, and whatever you are doing, maybe blended or any new thing which are going to come, the why, how, when is very, very important, how the school is doing. That brings one more very interesting perspective. And Lata ma'am, I want to be back with you. I think so. While Mr. Sarkar was having the point of the cultural shift, ma'am, you know that there are certain expertise, and we all know the experience that a teacher had. Say, when we always look at some legends which had 30, 40 years of experience, they were students really admired, saying, this was the teacher, when she taught me physics, I really understood it very well. Is that same teacher, when given a chance to be directly moving on the online way, do you feel the teacher alone has to cope up? Is there what kind of mechanism a teacher has to be prepared with, so that that same admiration and same quality, she can bring it on the screen?
Good question. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well, ma'am.
All right. Okay. See, the interesting part is the admired teachers over years and years have been people who have allowed, as we just heard all the panelists say, when they took responsibility for their own learning and the quality of learning, because all students don't show the same response. So the ones who are admiring their teachers, helping them cope with all these extraordinary kinds of learning which they've had, comes from the fact that the teacher was different. That out of 10 teachers, you pick those 2 teachers and say they made a difference, whether it was physics or history. So those teachers actually brought in the very fine elements. And it is very interesting if we ask ourselves that over 40 years, it is not that the technology has brought in the change. Blended learning does not even require a tool, as Vishnu said some time back. It does not require a screen. It does not require an instrument to be blended in its form of learning. Therefore, those teachers who led the process of the design, the communication, and the motivation required to make that learning outcome and competency happen, those were the teachers who were admired. So when I look back, right from the oldest pedagogy of either whether it was storytelling or whether it was Guru Shishya, I think had the whole spirit of inquiry in it. And those people who actually led the students to understand their own learning through either empathy or through understanding the problem in detail and not by rote, and could therefore say that that is what made the difference, has not changed. So when it comes to learning quality, when it comes to outcomes of learning, when it comes to understanding the environment, world around them, which is, and the problems and solutions to the problems which an educated mind must offer, I think good teachers, good education systems in very great buildings or outside of it rendered it. Today also we can see that whether it is online or offline, this quality of the teacher will show up.
I can't hear Lata ma'am also.
Oh my God, I can hear
No,
someone
ma'am.
saying.
No, ma'am. I can hear you. I think so. Ms.
Okay,
Sarkar has
fine.
got
All
some.
right. Yeah, I can hear C Vishnu
Yes.
also. So some probably can. So all that I'm saying is that while Pooja's point of view is right, to look at the ethos, it would be whether 40 years, 100 years, or 4 years. What are the people behind the show trying to actually make children and the process of learning happen? So that is one. There will always be, with every changing decade, with every changing or deeper understanding of process, I think there will always be refinement in the process in which education happens in any given place. Therefore, I think it's my personal opinion that yes, the school matters, the people behind it matters, and also it's very interesting. You know, the pedagogy is used for one subject may not be the same as is required for another subject or another problem solving approach required. So there are this blend to me also includes a blend of various pedagogies that must be used by the schooling systems to make sure that when they're hand-holding children, the right kind of designing by the people are done carefully. So I think what matters is how history could be taught outside the school and so could sustainability, and how could problems be solved in and out of environments. So I think each problem, if it is understood well, and if each subject, and today we are almost moving away from the new policy as it is showing very clearly, we are moving away from that very core subject related standalone verticals to a more comprehensive way of looking at it and giving children the opportunity to choose from anywhere and then pursue their dreams. So I think some of these shifts that have taken place are in the right spirit, should have already been there. And in good systems, it's already there. So
I
we do
understand.
find, why do we find, yeah. So whether it's experiential learning, whether it is the project-based learning, so different ways in different communication and themes and problem solving would require each of these different ways of understanding. And therefore, I think why, what, when, where, how, all these questions will need to be answered. Technology is only a tool, and in these different times, we are looking at technology as a tooling support to the teacher. And let me tell you that even those schools that do not have tools and children who do not have tools are still learning because there is one innovative teacher somewhere who's making that learning happen.
Absolutely,
By what
ma'am, and I think so. Yeah, you're very right, ma'am. In fact, teacher themselves are lifelong learner, and that's where I think so. Irrespective of 30 years, 40 years, or even if they wouldn't have touched the computer, even if they would have got blended in that approach, I think so. These teachers who are lifelong learners, they try to adapt to the new environment, and they still try to exhibit their skills so that their admiration and the knowledge that they want to pass on it remains the same. So for parents, it's not going to be, oh, this teacher who was great in the classroom may not be great on screen, or may not be great in the new approach. Is not true. So that very well clears the answer given
sorry
to you.
to interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you for just another few seconds. You know, the thing is that this technology gives us another dimension, that because learning seems to be so personalized, one-to-one with the teacher sitting, and you know, you can reach, it's anywhere, anytime learning that's really happening. It is in a different way, very engaging. It is a lot of dynamic interaction and group study collaboration that can happen. So there are these little findings for themselves. And when children do this, the quality of learning, retention, and experience and response to any unpredictable situations are really great from children. And when you see that, you have trust that irrespective of the problem. See, for example, like doctors said, we don't know how to deal with the pandemic. They are doctors. They are learning. So I remember Dr. Trehan saying that when it hit us in the month of March, in large numbers in the hospital, we didn't know what to do. Today, we are better equipped, not in terms of material, but in terms of ways and means of that mind which is responding. So the whole purpose of education is to find the new solutions to the problems that will come through. So I think these are, and also today is such a great opportunity for both parents, teachers, children to figure out what is the socio-economic impact of, let us say, a pandemic of this dimension. And the smallest one, whether it's a class 4 child or a class 12 child, just talking to a migrant labor and through finding out for themselves rather than being told what it is, I think will last a lifetime. These things happen once in 100 years. And if there is a child who knows what questions to ask of a migrant labor, for example, I think it unfolds the entire topography, the geography, the history of what the pandemic is all about. Yeah.
No, no, brilliant, ma'am. I think so. You very well pointed, saying this happens once in 100 years, and the royal report says that they'll be back by 60 years, and that's where it comes in for me to ask a very pertinent question which every parent has. And Vishnu, I want to address it to you. You being the CEO now, Heritage expanding the wings across. Uh, Sorry, but Vivek, I think so. Someone's phone is ringing. Can Okay. Vishnu, very importantly, we are in the midst of, I mean, particularly for private education and where these exhibitions are happening and parents who are flocking for private education, we know that the fees have taken a big issue across the nation. Government is still sleeping on whether they want to help. There are no packages given to education, and we are at the mercy between parents and this courts turmoil, which educators and CEOs and the trustees who are going pillar to post. Is it there is going to be a trend coming in where blended learning, when you introduce the terms of blended learning, are is it going to impact the fees? Is it going to increase or decrease the fees?
So, Bhavin, one thing I know, and I couldn't have said this 6 months back. Just hold on. I think it's the phone ringing is in my room. Just give me a minute.
Oh, sure.
So sorry. So one of the things which is which I think we have realized now, that schools which have been able to offer a quality learning experience online haven't had issues collecting fees. Uh, in 3, 6, 4 months back, it was quite a challenge. But now I do know that it's just not heritage. I do know of a few names where the schools which have had an underlying strong teaching and learning practice, and over that good practice you put a layer of virtual learning through technology, then it works really well and parents see value in it, and those schools have been able to recover reasonably good fees. A school like Heritage, for example, 97% of parents have paid fees consistently, and the 3% would have some economic challenges, and we have kind of provided scholarships and things like that. So that's one. I think parents are discerning, and if they see value for the child in the learning process, they're willing to commit to it. So I think a lot of onus is on the schools also to ensure that value gets provided, and schools have to ensure that the value gets communicated regularly, proactively, COVID or no COVID. With respect to government policy, my only suggestion to parents is, in fact, I was just tweeting this a couple of days back. One of the tragedies in our country is that our country believes that the government has an abundant capacity to deliver services, which nothing could be far from truth. We often make the mistake of overestimating the government's capacity to deliver. We all know that the courts are one of the most inefficient places. Yet, if there is a fight, we often say, I'll see you in court, knowing
Yes,
very well that you can find no solution there. We all
true.
know that anything with the government touches the institutions is not done really well. Yet, we want government to take over private institutions. Recently, I was tweeting, there's one magistrate somewhere in Rajasthan directed uh, an old hotel to be taken over by the government. I don't know what the judge was thinking in their good sense, that which is a good hotel that the government has run. And there are several examples of wonderful star properties, one of the world's best being run private enterprises. So the
True.
parents, if you really care for your children, understand what government can deliver and cannot deliver. Government cannot deliver, at least for the next 20 years, when it comes to education.
Absolutely.
Good public education is a rich country's privilege. We will probably have
Correct.
to wait for another 30, 40, 50 years for public education to be stronger to meet our children's potential and aspiration. It is a painful truth, but it has to be told. So if you really care for our children's education, then ask more from your private schools, but don't ask for government intervention in private schools, because that has never worked.
Yeah, it's like a inviting Trojan horse, and I think so. What you are saying very clearly is, for parents, you have to trust who's doing the best job, rely on them rather than someone who has absolute no track record of proving so far
Absolutely. Yeah.
anything that they have done good.
Yeah. So
Very
going to, I'm just going to take 10 more seconds now that you asked this question, and there are parents in this community. You look at historical data, not just in education, in any field. You look where has government delivered in it, and you look at another data point. Every successful Indian in India and abroad, being Sundar Pichais of the world or Satya Nadellas of the world, not
Sorry, Vishnu, we are losing you. We lost Vishnu's audio. We lost Vishnu's audio. But I'll just move on to my next question by the time Vishnu is coming back, and that's to Ms. Sarkar. When Vega, because I know when Vega had initiated, it had the state-of-the-art infrastructure by Fielding and Nair, and very good, you can say, norms when they had set up the infrastructure. What happens when a technology-enabled education has to be delivered? What do you expect a school to invest in this kind of infrastructure, and do you expect also parents to invest into technology?
Okay, so when you say that we don't only depend on technology when we are delivering our teaching through the PBL method, it is a blend of both. And as I said, it was there, it will be there. Now, yes, schools do have to invest in infrastructure. They have to invest in a lot of internet facilities, and we also need to be also aware and sensitive of the fact that, well, there are a lot of parents out there who are not able to do it. Now, it is sensitivity. It is the school has certain resources. The parents don't have those certain resources, but it is for the parents to have faith and trust in the school that the learning and the kind of development of the learning journey will continue. There has to be partnership between all the stakeholders. Communication needs to be open so that the school can talk to the parents can come to school as well. We need to partner with corporations, with individuals who make donations, so that if we need to distribute, say, tablets, software, dongles, things like that, which are necessary and which are required, we will go into that. But the most important bit is that, having said this, it must not be that we depend entirely on technology to do our teaching. It has to be blended, where we use technology only when it adds, aids, complements the learning that is happening over there. So it is absolutely not necessary that we have to come equipped with all the latest technology that is there. A teacher is a very good resource that you have over there. You call in individual people to come in and speak with them. You take your children to various places. You take them on virtual tours if you can't, or you take them physically over there. But it is to ensure that the learning happens and is very, very positive, without major emphasis on technology. Technology adds. Technology is not the substitute for everything. So
very good. Yeah, I think so. Parents need to understand, saying making their living room, study room, or the boardrooms that are there can't be converted into the new avatar movie where there are gadgets of Mac, and there you need the hi-fi, transformers to really deliver it. I think so. The teacher itself is a transformer, and in the flesh and blood that you can see, they can really do the best of the education. You really don't need to be very gadget savvy or really having a 3 terabyte internet connectivity.
Learning only becomes very active and dynamic if it reaches the child, and different children have different learning patterns. So you have to make sure that you understand the learning pattern of the child. It can be one-on-one, it can be group. Necessarily does not have to be through a screen. So that is where teachers come in. Teachers guide the child, they are the facilitators. And technology is just used.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Pooja, very importantly, and Vishnu did mention an extension of this parents' plight and this government's inefficiency. what happens? How should school bring equity amongst all section of parents if there is a divide in digital infrastructure? Cannot parents raise voice and ask the right question to the government? What do you think? We have a, like currently with the way we are facing, still we are facing challenge, having metros, having our best of the bandwidth. There is a big digital divide in our country. How do you really bring equity on all sections of parents? How do school do it?
So I think overall there is going to be a part of that burden that will come on the parent, whether you like it or not. Even if we had schools that provided for the basic gadgets, the child will need to go back home, do some bit of practice. There is going to be upgrade in technology that's going to be needed both at the school ends and at the child's end. So that shying away from that spend is something honestly I don't see going away. Having said that, with the way things are moving, I'm also hopeful that technology, what it costs today, will be a lot cheaper 10 years down the lane. So that burden will inevitably become a part of our life. And I heard somebody say the other day, I was having a chat with somebody, and they said it was earlier roti, kapda, or makan. Now it is roti, kapda, makan, and internet. And that has become an integral part of everybody's life. So there's no running away. Yes, as an individual, as somebody who has the right to ask the government questions, we should ask the government questions. But I'm going to echo Vishnu's thoughts. I'm only going to waste as much breath as is required to go in the direction where I'm going to yield results. So rather than, I think, spending my time to try and ask government the questions and fighting that fight, which I think is very important, and all those who have the bandwidth, please go ahead and do it. But I'm talking personally from my perspective. I would rather try and figure out what's the best way for me to make sure that the school that I send my children to fits in very well with what I can offer to my child. And that's a decision, again, every parent needs to make, that if you're in a school that relies very heavily on technology, vis-a-vis with a school that relies probably slightly lesser on technology, understand that a part of that burden will come on you and act accordingly.
Yeah, you're right, Pooja, in a way that you want to invest the energy where you can get the yield. But my appeal would be, I think so, while we talk about 21st century education, while we talk about the blended way which has to be accepted, I think so, parents who has the largest voice in the entire ecosystem and being a responsible citizen, it's high time. I mean, post independence, we have been always adjusting to whatever as a citizen we get. We haven't inculcated the culture, or we haven't inculcated the habit for our own kids or ourselves, that we ask the right question so that our future generation is benefited. Otherwise, it's always going to be a tug of war where, as a minority community, we'll be always sidelined, and there will be more hurdles that we are going to face in future. I have few more minutes, and I want to do like a rapid fire. Lata ma'am, your quick thoughts on in the blended way. Do you feel this is effective to deliver all the subjects? Can all the subjects be fitted in the blended way?
So a quick answer is yes, all subjects can be fitted in the blended way, except that the blended way should not be mistaken for only technologies aided, which is a digital way forward. And even there, I think, like you said, 10 years hence, everything. We did my major pipettes to micro pipettes in my lifetime I have seen. I'm sure there's going to be another way in which all practicals can also be conducted if it is not possible in schools. However, the blended way is the way forward, and it should not be mistaken with its limitations of offline-online business.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Vishnu, very quickly, on extension to that question is, would the social emotional learning be delivered through the blended way?
Yes, I think schools like Heritage are attempting that. There are modules which we have created, especially in the virtual setup, because children are alone. There are definitely fears and stress builds up when they don't make physical connections. So it's important to do those, and it is absolutely possible. Anything to do on the virtual format. It is not as effective as it could be in the real sense, but yes, do that.
Okay, that's quite possible. Ms. Sarkar, this is a question which I'm picking from a social media, and this highlights saying, would there be a complete online school? So probably, for example, which I'm trying to equate that question is that can there be a Vega online school, if suppose like you are Vega, and there will be a Vega offline school? are we looking at the birth of complete online school?
Well, yes, that is the road that we are walking down on right now. There can be an online school, but then if I would want it, I do think that children need to come to school. There has to be a physical school because academics happen, but the social, economic, educational skills, emotional skills, for all of that, you need a child to be in school, be with a friend, share things, the emotional quotient, the adaptability quotient, all of that happens if you're physically present in school with your group of friends. So online learning will happen if push comes to shove, that will happen, yes. But I think end of the day, all children need to come to school because other than academics, there is a whole lot of skills out there that need to be addressed. And that can only happen in school with a teacher, with friends. It's body language, it's eye contact, it's that encouraging pat on the back that happens over there. You can make out when a child is distracted. I think for all of that, children need to be in school. So offline school, maybe yes, but I think we need to have a physical school building for learning to happen holistically.
Absolutely. I'm also of the same opinion that yes, nothing can replace the experience that you get it by way of eye contact and a lot of other learning. I think so parents need to understand that academics is the only thing which you will feel that you are getting satisfied by way of interventions of technology. But let me tell you, in the whole journey of lifelong learning, I think so it's not only the academics, but that's the experience that a child nurtures through in the physical environment that they get it all across. So online schools, new schools, the Beijus, Vedantu of the world, which will come 3D or augmented reality, virtual reality, they may make billions by saying, you come to me and I'll get you the 5 stars out of it. But the experience, the culture, the ethos, the vision that a school is going to inculcate is going to make you successful in life and not only just the grades. Pooja, my final question to you is, what would be a piece of advice to the parents where you would feel that they should be, while choosing a school where we have only one topic of blended, but in any of your how, when, where, whatever it is, would you give some last piece of advice to the parents?
I'll stick by what I said. Don't follow, the blended approach. Don't even go by the infrastructure. Don't go by anything. Look at the people behind the scene. Understand the ethos of the school, and see if that ties in with the plans that you have. If you kind of invested in the school, it's actually the people that you're investing in. There will be teachers will change, principals will also change, but overall the ethos of the school and the people behind the school and what their motivation is hopefully will kind of stay constant, and that is what you need to invest your time in. Please spend some time on LinkedIn, go look up their profiles, make sure you understand, are these businessmen who are investing in this, or are these people who are kind of passionate about education and that's why they've got into it. There's enough information on all of them. It's just a matter of taking out those 4-5 hours, sitting down and doing that research. So make sure you understand the people behind the scene.
Yeah, as you rightly mentioned, saying at the summary of this story, in order to take an informed decision, it's very important that you sit back, look at the profiles, do some research. Who are the people? How they are doing it? What is their ethos, vision? It's very important to understand, irrespective of the ups and downs that life will, or according to me now, what this diabolic godsend situation that we are into. Probably, I think so. Just have patience. Things will get back to normal, and blended way, augmented way, the transformer way, whatever it comes through, please listen to the experts where you have already trusted faith and you have already shown your admiration to your teachers. Pass it on to your kids as well. Vivek, I'm already out of time. Thank you very much to all the panelists who have spent their Sunday brainstorming this very important aspect. And I think so towards the end, we unanimously agree that, and what Vishnu had pointed out, that the student who takes the lead in the learning and anything as an ecosystem that you build around it will always going to be staying it, irrespective of the difficult times or any times that are coming in. That pattern is what parents need to understand, which is going to be long lasting. Thank you very much. Over to you, Vivek, and then maybe I'll just say bye to all. Vivek, you need to unmute.
Thank you very much, for taking this, making this session very interesting and interactive. I can see a lot of appreciation flowing in the chat from many attendees, and my sincere acknowledgement and great sense of appreciation from Affairs side to each one of the distinguished panelists here for especially spending, a valuable time on a holiday on Sunday and committed. That this shows a great amount of commitment from as an individual and as well as from your institution side. So thank you so much, Lata ma'am, Vasadatta ma'am, Vishnu, Pooja, and my heartiest congratulations and thanks to my dear friend Bhavin. And with that, I would also like to thank each one of the attendees. So we had good number of attendees here, but this, let me tell you, this session was simultaneously is being streamed in 5 different social media handle, where around over 200 parents were already attended this session. So once again, over to you, Bhavin. I think last line, closing line from your side.
Thank you very much. This is so important discussion, and the positive aspect of this pandemic is, see, this has made our life so easy in a way. The dissemination of knowledge, anything that we are doing is on a click of a button. I don't have to really take a flight, rush through and meet and be on the podium to do it. It is embracing. I think so. Everyone has to look at the positive outcome of it, and I think so. We are making this happen with the leaders coming together, getting all the perspectives together. Thank you, Lata ma'am. Always, it's pleasure to have you on any of the forums, virtual or physical. Thank you, Mr. Kar. Thank you, Pooja, and thank you, Vishnu, for a very important perspective that you have built on. And blended is not the only term. There are various terms, and people, when they take an informed decision, they need to look at the larger picture, which school is going to be giving it to them. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bhavin.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bhavin, and thank you all my panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure being here. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure.